Hey everybody, I'm Tommy, and you're on the Love Boat. What's happening? Man, oh man, do you guys have any idea how busy you were last night? I look at analytics. Hey Todd, good to see you. Hope Between the Dreams, Jeremy Fowler, what's happening? Hey Cindy, Joey girl, good to see you. You look at analytics if you're a content creator because you like to know if you're screwing up. And if you're doing something wrong, the analytics will usually slap you in the face with it. Krista Melinda, good to see you. Rocket Queen, oh yeah. The Barbara, glad you're here. And what I mean by that, Cindy, you can see where you guys bail. You can see what, and then if I have a really serious spike and when people leave, I can see what I was doing then. If I dropped an F-bomb, I don't do that, but you get an idea of what turns off your audience and what doesn't. Taylor Miller, I'm glad you're here. So you guys it was the highest chat rate I've ever had, unless I was standing on the courthouse on the day of the Danny Masterson trial. You guys were cooking. Tommy Bird, Misael Smokes, I prayed for you earlier. Glad you're here. Hope you're doing better. Air Supply, what's happening? So I'm continuing to research the Epstein stuff, and I'll just give you a little bit of it. So there was a guy named Nick Bryant, and he actually had a hold of what is about as close to an Epstein list as you could ever have. Tony Suter, good to see you. And this was back in 2012, right? Hell of a long time ago. Renee B, I'm glad you're here. The Bee Lady, wouldn't be a show without you. Glad you're here. So just keeping it real. I do shows in the morning, and we were talking this morning about garbage in and garbage out. The stuff that you don't want to let into your life. And I made a thumbnail. I was getting ready to go live today, and I got a bunch of names of people because the redacted list that they have, it's all black. I mean, they've redacted absolutely everything on it. Nick Bryant didn't redact it. The stuff that he put out, it's the exact same information. It's just he didn't redact it. So you can see a list of names, and the list of names in many cases have circles around them. And they asked the guy that he got the book from, he was like the major domo. You know what that is? The guy that kind of took care of everything on that island. Hey, Wes, I'm glad you're here. And this guy, Alfredo Rodriguez, stole the black book. Straight up, stole the black book. And he wanted to auction it. He wanted to sell it. And they set up, he was trying to get $50K for it. And they brought the FBI in, and they set up a sting, and the FBI sent someone to buy it from him. And when that happened, he got busted. Got almost the exact same sentence that Epstein got for molesting 40 girls, about 18 months. But this cat actually had to do 18 months. He went to the feds. And then the book ended up in this guy Bryant's hands. And as I'm starting to read all of these names, you start to realize that there are people whose names are circled, and there are people whose names are not circled. According to Rodriguez, if their names were circled, they were sort of part of it. They weren't just hanging out. They weren't just customers or anything else. These were people that were helping in the organization and the whole process, so to speak. And I started to do some deep dives. And tomorrow I'm going to do this show, I promise. But if I do it tonight, I'm going to be screaming at the top of my lungs. I'm going to have veins popping out of my neck because I can't remember being this pissed off. There are people on this list that I've defended like an idiot. Lisa Trimble, good to see you. Glad that you're here. Renee B, there you are. Hey, Kathy. There are names on here that I defended, and it's a handsome dude, isn't it? And it makes you sick. It really does. And then it gets you questioning everything that you've ever thought about anything. And I'm not trying to be over dramatic or anything else. The images that I showed you yesterday are just dark. They're disturbing, and going through all of that stuff is ugly. But it's all of the people who seem to be aware of this. And I promise you, I'm just setting the table for tomorrow night because there's no way I could do this. I really can't. I found myself using language I haven't used in a very long time. And, just stuff that I wouldn't want to use on YouTube, especially in the first 5 minutes, because they'll just demonetize this thing. But when I start losing it, when I start using F-bombs, it's really, really obvious that the stuff that I'm looking at is having an effect. And it's not so much the images, which is shocking because those images can wreck you. Some of the stuff you didn't see is some of the grossest and most disgusting stuff in the world. And this stuff hangs in the house, right? In the living room, in the kitchen, right? Every room in this guy's house has pedophilia art on the walls. This is Tony Podesta, right? John Podesta's brother. It's just foulness, man. Absolute foulness. And the number of people that you can put in this house, the number of people that had dinner there. How do you walk into somebody's house that has just the images I showed you? I think I showed you 4 of them. But if those were the only 4 in the house, how do you not walk in there and go, what's wrong with you, man? Seriously, this is what you find art, right? You're entertained by images of girls who look like they just had their souls stolen from their bodies. So I started farting around and doing this 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein. Right? Brock Bandy, you're funny. The Brock Bandy just sent me a picture of this really handsome dude from a Chevy Chase movie from way back in the day. That is just too funny.
That's right.
I was a handsome dude. I'll tell you what. There was a time.
There was a time.
Here, check this out. You see that, dude? Look at that. Huh? There's a really young me before I was a Scoville. Boy, is that funny, man. So I started doing this 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein instead of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. And you start tying this guy to people, and you get to a place where, no joke whatsoever, this is a great question, Renee B. This is why the crew of the Lifeboat makes the Lifeboat so much better. Does this Tony have a wife and kids? If he has a spouse, she's totally dominated to allow those pics. Her name's Heather, or was. I don't know if they're still married. You know, because sometimes the things that people tolerate or the things that people groove to, they don't groove to nearly as much when the whole world finds out that this is something that hangs in your house. So I don't know if they're still together, because good God. But the number of people that have been in this house, and it's not just politicians, although just about every politician on earth, if you are a lobbyist, your job is to bribe politicians. And if you think that it's anything other than that, then you just don't understand the system. But lobbyists bribe politicians. Now, you can't bribe a politician, Tommy. That's not legal. No, it's not. And you can't just show up and say, hey, I got $5 million. I really want you to push this bill through. Let's just say you're Philip Morris Tobacco. And you know that you're about to get sued by a crapload of people who are dying of lung cancer. Well, if Congress passes some laws that push this out for a few years, there's no way you're going to be able to duck it. But if you could just duck it for a few more years, then you can change your company, right? You can buy other companies that don't make cigarettes, so that by the time you get sued, you own Nabisco or you own some other large company. You could even get into stuff that has nothing to do with growing things. And this is the kind of stuff that happens. Well, how do you bribe them? You show up and you say, when's your reelection coming up? How about if I start a political action committee for you? Because as a citizen, I can't donate more than $4,300 or something like that to any one candidate. That's the maximum amount that a U.S. citizen can donate to a candidate. So when you hear that, you know, they've got these huge donors, you can't have huge donors, right? We passed laws so that you couldn't buy politicians. And then they got around those laws. And they came up with the Political Action Committee. If you see a commercial and it says, this ad was run by the Committee to Re-elect, put in the lowlife's name there. That's a political action committee. And they could dump $25 million into that. They could put $100 million into that. I mean, yeah, the press might talk about it or whatever, but it's done all of the time. And then there's other ways you can get around it. Listen, I really want to talk to you about this tobacco thing. These lawsuits are going to end up decimating a really good company that hires a lot of people, man. We're going to lose a lot of jobs. How about if we go to the Bahamas this weekend? True story, right? How about we go to the Bahamas this weekend? We play some golf and we talk about this. Or there's a forum that's going to be discussing all of this stuff in pick your favorite place on earth, because they'll let you. This is the same thing that the Sacklers did. You can't pay off a doctor. You know, you see the little things that doctors get that say the name of a prescription drug on it. You can give them those kind of things. Promotional stuff. You can give them all you want. Then they got around all of that, not being able to bribe people, by saying, we can hold trainings anywhere in the world to teach the doctors about this new wonder drug, OxyContin. The first training we do is going to be in Bali. Bring your wife, bring your kids. So you get a ripping 2-week vacation in Bali while they train you on OxyContin, which takes 4.5 hours, because you already know what the drug is. The drug has been around since before World War II. They just managed to take 80 milligrams of it legally and stretch it out over the course of a day, which you never were allowed to do prior to the Contin delivery system brought to you by the shitheads at Sackler. Sorry. But this is the kind of crap that they can get away with. So this Tony Podesta, being the biggest lobbyist that America has ever seen, there isn't a politician on earth this guy hasn't tried to bribe. And a bunch of them have been to his house. They've looked at this art. Everyone has been around sketchy people, especially if you've done drugs, and I count myself amongst those, but I've never been that messed up to see and hear those things. You know something? I remember, Renee B., I'm glad that you said this. I remember being in situations a lot where you had to be around some people that were just not the kind of people you would invite to your house. But I'll tell you a story. It's gospel truth. In the middle of a driving snowstorm, a guy that I knew all of about 3 hours said, "You got a 4-wheel drive vehicle?" I didn't, but my girlfriend did. And he said, "Could you drive me to Sacramento? I'm picking up." He was picking up heroin. And he said, "I'll give you a quarter ounce." That's a lot of heroin, right? It really is. So I said, yeah, I can give you a ride there. And it was me and a friend of mine who was the go-between that introduced us, an old Vietnam vet, a black guy named Lenny. He was sitting in the passenger seat. And this guy got into the back seat. He's a gang member. I won't mention the gang, but he's not white. And he got in the back seat with his girlfriend. And about halfway there, started beating the hell out of her like she was a dude. And I pulled the car over to the side of the road, and I pulled him out of the back seat, and I punched him until I couldn't make a fist. If I went into this Podesta dude's house, that's what I would have done to him. The art on that wall, I just started tearing off the wall, because you got to be evil to buy this stuff. I don't know what's going on with the cat that's painting it. Honestly, I don't. One of his favorite artists is a woman who was viciously raped from the age of about 2 to the age of about 6. And it literally caused her to protect herself, right? There's a lot of people that like to fake this DID stuff, this dissociative identity disorder, because right now it's the hottest thing on TikTok. But there are people who really have it. This was God's way to protect people in the worst situations on planet Earth. Their brain goes, I'm just going to create a new character. And that new character can take all this ass kicking or all of this rape or all of this abuse. That way I can protect the host. Because that's really what, we do. What I said this on other shows many times. Hey, Wharton Fissel, a lot of times all we're trying to do is protect the organism. If you're limping, it's because if you walk regular, you're going to injure yourself worse. Well, you can do that with the brain, and it will split out a new character. Well, some of her personalities are children. And the paintings that she does looks like they were done by a 4-year-old. And Podesta's buying them up as fast as he can get them. He probably owns her entire collection. But in every single one of them, she's reliving the horrors of when she was a child. And he finds it entertaining. This is the guy who is determining the policies that are happening in our government more than the politicians are. This is hard to swallow. Honestly, this is a rabbit hole that I wish didn't exist. But make no mistake, the reason that this stuff isn't coming out isn't because the Republicans don't want it to come out or the Democrats don't want it to come out. Nobody wants it to come out. Because when it gets out, somebody like me, right, who has a big platform, is going to start playing this 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein game. And we're going to find out that there ain't nobody, and I mean nobody, involved in this thing that isn't within 6 degrees of separation to Jeffrey Epstein. This cat knew everybody. He collected people. The more I dive into this, the more I realize he collected people. Let me give you a little, just a taste of what we're going to be talking about tomorrow night. Bill Clinton is in Epstein's book, right? I don't think anybody's shocked by that. But if I told you he had 24 different phone numbers in Epstein's book, there was not a way that you could get a hold of Bill Clinton on earth. Allegedly, there are 24 names. I mean, it's not alleged. It really isn't. He had 24 numbers next to his name in that book. Our current president had 12. Several belong to Alan Dershowitz. And Dershowitz's story doesn't really ring out quite as true as we all might have hoped it did. And the more that I research that cat, the more I realize that if you're a pedophile or if you've got a really whacked sex case, he's probably the best you could hire on earth. And he has said some things in the past Like, he believes that the age of consent should probably be closer to 15 or 16. Allegedly. I'd probably say that since this guy's a lawyer. But that's a guy that I defended because I bought his BS story. He has advocated for law changes to give lowlifes the opportunity to hang out with people who are underage. He said some really whacked stuff. And if you start to deep dive this stuff, you're going to find it. It's not like this stuff is, I'm no Harvard researcher, right? I'm a recovering heroin addict that has a YouTube channel and just is starting to learn this whole deep dive process. Honestly, I'm a year and a half into this process of learning how to do research. But if I can do this, how easy would it be for Fox to do it? If I could do this, how easy would it be for CNN to do this? You know why none of them are doing it? Because they got leverage on all of these people. And you got to wonder what that leverage is, because the subject matter at hand might lead you to believe that the leverage they have on them is that they've caught people right around that age that lawyer thinks might be okay for consent. There are some heroes in this. There really are. Somebody left a comment earlier and said, boy, you'd like a list of all the people that turned the other way. And I said, I don't think you have any idea how big that list would be. I said, you might want to make a list of all the people that didn't turn the other way. And that list is so small. That's what the person said. I imagine it would be a really, really small list. It's all very available for any human being to look up. Seriously, they just don't know to, or they aren't allowed to. I have found four stories that would have stopped this pedophile when there were 100 victims instead of 1,000. There was really excellent research done on this cat by 4 different reporters who all had their stories killed. I mean, you want to hate ABC for doing this, but you know what? They all did it. Everybody did it. And the ones that bucked up a little bit got threatened, had their pets killed. This is sick. It really is. It's sick. And hey, Harry, how are you? Australia's in the house. Zarina, I got a bit of a hangover. It's not the kind that it would have been a lot easier if this was a hangover from booze, because you can do a couple of shots, right? The hair of the dog that bit you kind of a thing. Kind of even that out. That acute alcohol withdrawal can be beat. And if not, you drink a crap load of water, you sweat it out a little bit. This kind of hangover lasts a minute. Because I believed really wholeheartedly that we were that shining city on the hill. I did. I grew up when civics was still taught. I said the Pledge of Allegiance, right? I can still sing every single schoolhouse rock. I believed all that stuff. And it's very difficult when you find out that you've been getting lied to really badly. Like, we're really awful. And I love the country. I'm not bad mouthing the country, but the politicians are evil. They're evil. Now, maybe the president's worried they're going to kill him. As you start doing research on this, one of the other things that you're going to find if you start doing some really deep dives is that allegedly the Biden White House could have stopped that shooting. Allegedly. They had a lot of information on this kid. So maybe he's terrified. I sure as hell would be. It's scary just to research this stuff. I'm not giving him a pass. You took this job. Die for this. There's nothing else more important. Honest to God. You want to go down a hero? You want to be a famous president? Die for this. It's worth dying for. The 1,000 victims are worth dying for. But the 10,000 victims that are going to happen because they don't do anything about this, or the 100,000 victims, I found research, pretty solid stuff, that alleges that Epstein, what's the other cat's name here? Jean-Luc Brunel was his partner in crime. The two of them opened up a modeling agency of sorts. I mean, it's just a front. But we all know that they were molesting kids. This isn't a shocker. Would you be shocked if I told you they were buying them? Because there were some reporters that did some amazing research about how they were buying children, buying them outright. Slavic kids, And you know why? Because they're not real. They don't matter to them. Not enough money. Not a family that can look after them. So they're just there to steal that innocence, get some kind of a buzz off of that. There's research out there, a bunch of it, from people who were close enough to the Lolita Express and the scumbag that flew on it all the time, the guy that was at least the face of this, to say that he had a harem. I found 3 different people that have described it as a harem. A harem of what? Little girls. This guy surrounded himself with a bunch of young women whose souls had already been really seriously bruised, if not destroyed, by what he was doing to them, who would march around in panties and bras that weren't able to be filled yet. And this is the shining city on the hill. And you start hoping that maybe there is a shining city. Maybe it's not us, right? Maybe the people of Great Britain could do something about this. And you start doing more research, and you come to realize that it doesn't look like any of the big players aren't filthy. You know, France doesn't look good in this. I'm sorry, it really doesn't. Tomorrow we're going to go through all of this stuff, but I need to go take a friggin' shower and try to scrub this stuff off of me. I'm not kidding. It's just ugly. I have to email you my story about my experience with Ted Kennedy when I visited DC when I was 16. Oh, good God. I could probably, you know, do you remember the waitress that talked about him? You know what? I'll do that tomorrow night too, or I'm just going to really start the Franklin cover-up. You know what? The only people that went to prison, I'm talking about this tomorrow night, Sonny. But I'm going to talk about the Franklin cover-up, and you're going to vomit in your mouth, because the only people that got incarcerated in the Franklin cover-up, which is a very similar kind of a case, but the only people that went to jail were victims. And I'm not playing with you. They were victims. People who were victimized by these people ended up incarcerated. I'm not kidding. I know you can't make this stuff up, but that's what happened. And the 2 people that were probably really could have broken the whole thing open died in a plane crash. Does this sound familiar? By the way, Jean-Luc Brunel got arrested in France and hung himself in his cell. If I had said, what do you think might have happened to Jean-Luc Brunel? Most of you would have gone, did he hang himself in his cell? Yeah, he got arrested and was waiting for the same kind of a sentence, and he hung himself, kind of like Epstein did. Check this out. Now, there's no way to verify this. There is no way. You hear what I'm saying? I don't want to play stupid games or any of that stuff, but do you see this picture right here? Who does that look like to you? Because allegedly, this was taken from a drone over Little James Island. And it looks a lot like Jeffrey Epstein sitting in a golf cart or some kind of a little vehicle or something, looking up right into the sun. Trouble is, this was after he killed himself. Now, I don't know if that's Epstein. I also don't know if that picture was taken before or after he killed himself. The problem is, if you can't get a hold of the photo, for all I know, this was taken a year or 2 before that. However, there are a lot of people running with this thing and saying this is absolutely a photo that was taken after the guy's death. I don't know if that's true. But you know something? I no longer believe anything. And that's terrifying. Honest to God. I'm sorry if I'm bumming any of you guys out as well. This has to be talked about. For real, this has to be talked about. Because the only people that are going to be able to really do some damage are going to be social media people with really small footprints. Because if you got a big footprint, then they're going to get at you, right? If you're getting 2,000 views, 5,000 views, you probably fly under the radar and talk about this stuff, at least for a while. But if I stepped on the Lolita Express, I would have done the same thing as every one of you would have. I would have started crushing people's skulls, because that's just jacked. When a bunch of 13 and 14-year-old girls, and I have said many times, because the research has said that there is one girl at the age of 12, and the rest of them are all older than that. Today, going through some research, that just doesn't seem to be the truth either. There were people a lot younger than this. Been looking at the Nick Bryant list. Crazy some of the names. Crazy some of the circled names. And when you start tracing this and seeing just the tentacles of this, I'm pretty confident that none of you are within the 6 degrees of separation of Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not confident of anybody else, right, that isn't here with us today that didn't in some way get close enough to this guy to be tainted. And here's the thing. I have said from Jump Street, I don't think that our current president was guilty of the things that Epstein was guilty of. I don't think he was partying with Epstein that way, because he wouldn't have been campaigning with this and releasing this and then having his people come out and say they're going to release it and then yank the rug out and say they're not going to, right? Doesn't make sense. But I think what we would find is he was very aware of what this guy was. I think that we're going to find that there wasn't anybody, right? He didn't name the Lolita Express himself. And it wasn't called that after he got busted. Everybody called it the Lolita Express. There were tons of people, right? This was just something that people talked about like it was okay. And the other thing I said yesterday was, what kind of authority does it take to go to a federal prosecutor and say, we're not prosecuting this? Who can say that? Because when Acosta was asked, he said, I don't remember exactly who it was, but somebody, said, no, there's a deal in place and we're not going to do this. You don't remember who it was, because the research that I did said there's only two people that could have made that phone call. One was a guy named Alberto Gonzalez. He was the attorney general at the time. He could have stopped that. The only other person that would have had the authority to have somebody stop was George W. Bush. Not H.W., the dad, the one that couldn't say nuclear right. The one that was in office when we lost the Twin Towers. It's disturbing as hell. It really is. And the more you start doing research, the more you find out things that just make you want to vomit. Like, do you know that we had a description of what happened on 9/11, and that we were running exercises of what would happen if people flew planes into the Twin Towers? You think that they just picked that randomly out of the hat? There's a lot of really weird crap. And I was the first one to say, I don't believe that came down with explosives. I spent a lot of time in both of those buildings, and they never closed. Because of all the different markets all over the world, there was always somebody in those buildings, right? Always. You just couldn't have gone in there and started running. If you ever seen them take down a building, it looks like a spider web. The amount of debt cord that runs to everything, there's no way you can pull it off, right? I've said that forever, but it smells really bad. And a lot of the things that I wholeheartedly believed in, I don't believe in anymore. So I'm going to take a shower and I'm going to get a lot of sleep. And when I come back tomorrow, I'll be able to get through doing this without dropping an F-bomb on every fourth word, because I'm really not that person, but I'm so pissed off I can't explain it. And that's how you're going to feel. I'm giving you a heads up, right? What do they call it? The blue pill and the red pill, right? If you want to take that blue pill, I don't blame you. I really don't. If you'd like to not know about all this stuff, because there are going to be people that you probably believed in, I mean, big time believed in. And after tomorrow, I'm going to be going live at 7:05 California time tomorrow night. And the thumbnail will make it real obvious that I'm going to be talking about this. But I just need to put a little love in my heart, because honestly, I'm pissed. I'm pissed. I don't remember being this pissed. Watch the first episode of The Lone Gunman. Yeah, believe it or not, I know what you're talking about. But I'll put this up there for anyone that doesn't. Watch the first episode of The Lone Gunman, aired in the spring of 2001. X-Files spinoff. Plot was government took over 747 and was flying it toward the Twin Towers. But that's because it was probably based on a drill that they had been practicing in the United States that was based on that as a concept. There's a lot of stuff that's really creepy. And you keep falling into something else where you go, oh my God. And all of the people just seem to continually line up, one right after the other. And you start realizing that there are some families, like we don't have oligarchs and we don't have royalty and we don't have, yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. Like the Bushes and the Clintons. And you start realizing that there's just a whole lot of incest that goes on between the powers that be. And we're just a bunch of adults out here going, well, the Republicans this and the Democrats that. I'll tell you something, folks. They're not running squat. It looks a lot like the people running the world work for agencies that have nice abbreviations. You understand what I'm saying? All right, I'm going to be back tomorrow night. Thank you for being kind to me. And you know what? If you pray, if you're one of those people, pray for the United States of America and for every other developed nation. Because honest to God, it's really hard finding one that doesn't seem to have a lot of ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Between now and the next time I see you, do me a favor and put a little love in your heart. I'm sorry that this one is short, people, but I really don't want to get into a stream of curses that would make my mother and father ashamed of me. All right. I will see you on the next one. I love you guys. Good night.